In terms of just getting around on the board, we really access several different sets of screens with these access buttons below the monitor screen. If you want to access a channel, you have to press the select button on that channel. And as soon as you do that, and go here to processing, that's the channel that you're looking at is the one that you selected. So notice on the EQ screen, I'll select this channel. The EQ changes pretty radically, so that's what we're looking at. As soon as we're on the channel, if we want to, instead of adjusting EQ, adjust compression, we just press the corresponding button. That's the gate button. If we want to set the trim, or if we want to label it. Also, the preamp control up here, anytime you have a channel selected, you can adjust the trim right here. The processing button activates the page that has to do with gating, compression, and EQ, as well as trim levels, and that's how we get to the page that we can label the scribble strips. So if we start at the top of this, we can see that we have the trim level. If we press on the name, it gives us a screen that we can relabel the scribble strip with. And we get out of that. And then this is the gate control. And we're not using gates a lot. I mean, I have some set up on some of the drum stuff. And then press the EQ screen here, and the controls for the EQ now are over on the other side, and you just select the band and you can boost and cut. There you can control the bandwidth there, and you can also just drag these things around too. You have to start on the squares, so you can't just randomly tap somewhere and have it work. You have to actually grab there's a little square at the top of that, which is where the band frequency is. There's another one there, another one there. There's two of them there, a red one and a blue one. So you can just grab those and drag them around. Sometimes it's just as easy to select the band and turn the controls. And we can pretty much always get to the high pass filter if we have it engaged. We're just up and down. So most of the channels, I think, always have the high pass filter engaged in the patch that I have, and you can change that. And this is where we turn on the high pass filter, gate, and compressor. This is the stock compressor. So if you want to change the threshold, move it down into the signal and get more compression, or move it up to get less compression. The direction that knob goes, if you have less compression, it's going to let more signal come through, so it's like turning it up. So it goes that way. And moving the threshold down goes that way. Most of the time we want to have the ratio set between 3:1 and about 7:1, and the way this works with that is you have to actually tap on it, and there's a controller knob down here, and that's where you would change that ratio. And you can change the threshold here too if you want at that point, just like the knob on the other side. And you can regain some lost level if you need to. And then up at the top are the attack time and release time controls. You select those and you can make the changes with the controller knob at the bottom. The thing that's pretty handy on this page is you can see right under the name right there where it says Low Freak, that says S-Link 10, and under Sarah G it says S-Link 25, and Sarah K is S-Link 26. And here's one that says local. So local is something that's actually plugged into the board here back in the sound position. If you really want to, if somebody says, what's the room mic plugged into? You can say, okay, that's plugged into S-Link 12, because you can see it right there underneath the channel name. Another way to do that, these buttons that are over here, one of them says view, and if you're looking on the scribble strip, as soon as we press the view button, it shows what the inputs are. all across the scribble strip. And you can tell they don't go in order, and that's just because we've had to connect things on different sides and been able to move different channels down onto this bank. The S-Link stage boxes are on stage, and there are two of them. On the drum side are S-Link 1 through 16, and on the keyboard side is S-Link 17 through 32. Although the numbers on the keyboard side still say 1 through 16, you just have to do the math in your head. So you can play with this if you want. It's a little bit touchy. If you press the setup button, you'll find a page that has on it along the side surface. So if you press the surface button, you'll end up seeing all these channels, and you'll notice that right now the top and the bottom are the same, but as we move this way, now all of a sudden you start to see that on the top, which is really just a list of the channels, the source channels, it's different from the bottom. So in this setup, I've basically found the two background vocals, which would be right there, and just drug them down here, because whatever we want to move around, if we want to take a channel source and move it onto our channel strip, we just have to drag that back and forth like that. So it's pretty easy, but you need to keep track of it. But that's why it's handy to have something like this view control where you can see what the source channel is as opposed to what the name of the scribble strip is. The routing page starts to get a little bit more complicated because it's where we really assign our DCA and aux sends and mute groups. It's a setup page for how the whole board is really laid out. So I wouldn't mess with that too much, but that's what that does. And you can tell that on certain channels, we have the mute groups selected. Other channels, we have mixes on the aux setup. So this is very flexible, but for weekend to weekend use, probably don't need to access that page very much. Another page is the meters page, and this basically just shows the levels on all the channels. So if you have the band playing during sound check and you want to just see if anybody's getting out of control or if the levels aren't hot enough, use this page and you can scroll up and down to see all the input channels. The next page is the effects page. And the way that we're using this, we have 4 different effects that we're using right now. So we can set up to 8. And the first effect is drum reverb. And right now it's set on a Lexicon 480 Live Hall. The next is vocal reverb. And it's set up on a Hall reverb. And then down to the next one is the regular delay that's synced to tap tempo. That's what controls the delay time. As I tap the tempo, the numbers change. And the lights are flashing. So there's all sorts of controls. This is the longer delay that I was talking about. And then to access the different effects, you always have to just press the library button. And that gives us a long list of effects that we can use. And we can scroll through these and make our selections. There are a lot of options. The library button lets us select options for the function that we've selected. So if we're in EQ, or say we're in compression, if we press the library button, we'll find a list of options. So we have the aftermarket plugins for this. So, there's 1176, there's an LA2A simulation in here. There's certain different types of compression that we can use. So, it's kind of experimental with that. So if we select, just recall this, then that compressor turns up. That's a really nice compressor. I actually have that compressor on the main output of the board, and so you really have to be, I don't know how many people are using that, but you have to be really aware that that's there, because if something gets out of control or there's too much low end in the kick drum, or bass guitar, or the mix is out of whack, you can hit that compressor too hard. But it puts a little lid on how loud it will go, but it also compresses the mix, so it's a little bit more of a polished master sound. So basically with this, if you're going to use it, you should have the ratio at infinity to 1, and then just set the threshold so that maybe once in a while you see the gain reduction light, one gain reduction light blink, 1 or 2, but you don't want to hit it much harder than that. But that keeps a lid on what's going on. So if we were using EQ and we selected the library button, we'd see different options for types of EQ. And we found the one we wanted to use, randomly select that, hit recall. Next page over is scenes, and that's where we store our scenes. So I snagged the first one. So if I want to recall my scene, I just highlight that. If I want to move it around, if I want to recall Robbie's scene, I'll highlight that, and then over here, just press the go button. There's plenty of scenes for whoever wants to store some. The next button over is the setup button. And that's, I already went over the surface layout. But there's several different options here. Pretty much won't need to get to most of those. You might take a look and see what they are. And then the next one is the utility button, which has to do with the recorder and how the USB is connected, whether we're recording to a thumb drive or whether we're streaming to the computer. So we have it set to stream to the computer, and you probably won't need to change that. The other options that are on there are data storage. This is the USB utility where we update the firmware, and this is how we select the SQ drive. The SQ drive is the onboard thumb drive. And then auto mix, we don't do that. That's for kind of a conferencing thing. The last button here is the I/O button. This you shouldn't probably touch because it's the most complex part of setting this board up. If we look at the inputs and we start on the kick channel, so the channels are down this way and the inputs are across that way, the stage boxes are connected to the S-links. So we just basically have kick drum is 1, snare drum is 2, snare bottom is 3, toms are 4, 5, 6, overhead is on the hat side is 7, overhead on the ride side is 8, and it just pretty much goes straight through. But then there's some stereo channels. So the keyboard stereo channel takes up 2 inputs, the guitar stereo channel takes up 2 inputs, and with the rest of the assignments that go over to the other stage box on the keyboard side, we still just go pretty much straight through, advancing channel per input. And when there are several kinds of mix outputs, there's the aux assignments, which are already set. We don't really need to worry about those. You know, there's an effects rack, there's a monitor out. There are tie lines where we can go from one place to another, patching things that normally wouldn't be patched together. So not too much more to worry about on that. The Talkback is right here above the controller knob, and we just press it to talk back. And the Talkback mic is always right here. If you want to engage the Talkback mic, you can double click it and it will stay on, but you don't really want to do that because it makes everybody's headphones sound really funky when the worship is going on. So pretty much just hold it to talk, release it to stop talking. The headphone output is over here, and you control your level there. This board has what's called a PAFO, and we can set whether it's post fade or after fader. So if you want to listen to the lead you would just press PFL. It would be in the headphones and just the level right there. So that can be set up a few ways. It's just a matter of going into the setup mode here and going to audio and pressing PAFL, and then we can set how that's going to respond by pressing here and scrolling through the options. And then when we're ready, we would just X out.